Hey, what's going on, everybody? Back with another how-to. Today we're going to be doing the valve cover gasket on this 2015 Dodge Dart. Now this is a 2.4, so this should fall in line with any Dodge Dart, which is 2013 to 2016, so let's get into it now. Alright, so once we got the hood popped, have our engine cover staring us in the face. So first thing we're going to do is remove this engine cover. Now it's held in with 4 10 mil nuts. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and fire those off and get this cover off. All right, so we got all 4 of our 10 mil nuts out, holding in the cover. So once you get those out, you just pop and lift the cover right off, exposing the engine. And I like using magnetic trays just to keep everything organized. So that's where we have the cover nuts, and we'll be doing the same thing for everything else we take out. So let's go ahead and start disassembling this thing. All right, and just for reference, you can see some of that around the edge there of our valve cover gasket. All right, so we're leaking there, and we got a ton of oil in here. It might be hard to see, but right here, look at that. It's completely drenched. So this thing's been leaking for a while, both on the seals and on the cover itself. So car only has 67,000 miles as of right now, and like I said, it looks like it's been leaking a while, so not good. And one thing we're going to do before we get started, do you have to do it? Probably not. Is it in your best interest? Probably. We're going to go ahead and disconnect the negative battery cable. All right, so as you can see, we have a few obstructions here holding us down from actually getting to this valve cover and getting it off. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove this air intake tubing hose right here. All right, so it's connected here. We're just going to lift this whole thing out, and we're going to remove this first. So we're going to start right here with this harness. Should press it in, slide right off. Now what we're going to do is approach these clamps. So if you look down here, the clamp holding right here on our tube, that is a 7 mil. So we're just going to lightly loosen this up with a 7 mil. All right, I just have a little 1/4 7 mil. We're just going to break that loose and start backing this out a little bit to loosen that up a hair. All right, and now we're going to come over to this one on this side, right where the air box is. Now this one is a 8 mil. So I have an 8 mil here, same thing, 1/4. We're just going to lightly loosen this up, take some of that tension off of that clamp, and we have both of our clamps now loosened up. Now that we have our clamps loosened, we could go ahead and approach this bolt right here retaining the tube. 10 mil. All right, so we back that out, just hit it with an impact. This retainer bolt is a 10 mil. And now if we come to the center of the valve cover, you'll notice that there is a clip, little press tab here. I just have a panel popper remover. Should be able to lightly remove this. You want to be really careful though, because this is actually pretty tight in here. And I'm not getting the leverage that I would like. I don't want to break anything. Alright, so I'm just going to lightly work this out here. Alright, so that push clip was a bit of a struggle, but we got it out. So this should all be freed up now, this whole air box. So, yep, you see we got lifting up right there. Dropped right off over here. Should be able to just sneak the whole assembly out in one piece just like this. Alright, let's go ahead and put this to the side, and we'll keep on moving. All right, so now that the air tube is removed, we can go ahead and keep it moving. So we do want to get these electric harness rails off, but to do that, we want to remove this breather hose first. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and remove our PCV hose right here. I have some long needle nose pliers. What I want to do is just start working this, and hopefully we can crack that rubber loose free. And then we should be able to back this thing right off just like this. All right. And there we go, hose is free. All right, and we also want to remove this breather hose coming right from the front of the valve cover to the air box right there. So we're just gonna do the same thing. Long needle noses. Just gonna try to break that rubber free. Might take a little bit here. And you want to do different parts of it. So I started at the front, worked my way to the back of it, and then got it free. So now we have that hose free from the valve cover as well. All right, now that we got both of those hoses disconnected, it gives us a little bit more playroom to free up this electronic rail here that has the harnesses and wiring running through it. Now if you trace this, it's got wiring to the alternator, and you can see it shoots down there as well. So we're going to try to disconnect the least amount possible and just enough to get this snuck out of the way, and we can still get the valve cover out without having any issues. So what we're going to do first here is we're just going to disconnect the harnesses here that are part of the rail that go right to the ignition coils. So if you look, you just pull that red tab back here. All right, and once you do that, the harness should slide right off. All right, so red tab back, press down, right off. All right, so we're just going to pop all these off, and then we'll go ahead and try to get these rails off of here. All right, now we're going to go ahead and work on these other retaining push clips here, holding in our rail. So this plastic electronic rail, 1, 2, 3 push clips on this side. You already took the one out here. 1, 2, 3. And so we're going to use the same thing, panel popper, just try to be really gentle and work all these out. Yeah, it doesn't look like these things are going to cooperate. This thing actually broke, so if you can see, but that's the head right there. It's still in there, so we're probably just going to have to break all these and just go get some new ones, some cheap ones from AutoZone. But they've been, you know, hot, cold. It's cheap plastic, you know, over the course of time, they just get brittle and break down. So don't stress it if you break them. Sometimes it's truly inevitable. So we're going to just go ahead and get the remainder of these out, and then we'll have the rails free. All right, so we got all the retainer push clips out. You know, they all broke. Like I said, don't kill yourself over. It's not too much you can do. They're just regular style clips. I mean, we could go get these anywhere really. So to get these to lift up and out of the way, we do have a few more things we want to disconnect just to make it as easy as possible. So we want to disconnect that right there. Just want to pull that clamp that's retaining it right here. We'll pull that off of this line. You can actually pull this heat shield back a hair. Then you should be able to put your thumb on it and pull and disconnect that harness perfectly. So we got that one disconnected. I want to do the same thing for this one right here. So this one, you're just going to have a front angle actually on it. The clip, the press is right up top. There we go. Slide that right off. Okay, now you can see this is starting to free up a bit. We have some play, and this is a little bit free. All right, so we're trying to get this out with the least amount of work possible, of course. So what we want to do to try to just get this out is I'm going to try to maneuver the valve cover underneath of this without disconnecting this entire harness, because if you trace them both down, I mean, it's just a lot more work than we really want to get into. So you can lift this up. All right, if you see there's a hole here, it goes around that stud, lift it up, gives us a little bit more playroom on that back rail. And I want to try to pop this out right here, right next to the battery, just like that. And that should relieve a little bit more tension on this. All right, so if you look, we could essentially move this around a lot where we probably can sneak the valve cover up and out this way. So we're going to leave the harness right where it is, just like this, and we're going to go ahead and continue with removing our remaining components. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get our ignition coils out now. These are retained with a 10 mil, so I have a 10 mil. I'm just going to break all of these free. All right, and I'm going to take them each out one by one, okay? And then we're just going to put them right up on the window in order to keep them safely out of the way. And that way we can just put them right back where they belong when we're all done and go to reassemble everything. And all you do is just pull up on the coil. It should pop right out. This is actually pretty clean for the most part. So we're just going to go ahead and put this right up here gently out of the way, and we're going to do the same thing for the other three. All right, so we have all of our coils out now. There's a couple more things we want to do before we go ahead and start getting the bolts off and try to get the actual cover off. Is there is a retainer right here. All right, slid over. Just pull that out, put it to the side in my magnetic tray. Now, a lot of my, if you look, a lot of these zip ties are actually broken, but this one is broken as well. Now, this should be connecting this wire, but if not, you can take a panel popper and just pop this right off, which I'm still going to do anyway, because this is a nice little retainer right there. But there we go. You want to get that off. And now we can go ahead and focus on getting all of the bolts surrounding the outer edge of the valve cover, and we can go ahead and get this thing off. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get into getting all of the surrounding bolts and studs and everything associated with holding the valve cover to the cylinder head down. We're going to go ahead and get all that off. So we're going to start right here with this big stud. It is a 16 mil. I just took a 16 mil wrench, freed it right up, and then it should start spinning right off. What we're going to do is go ahead and get this hard line here in front of the valve cover freed up. So as you can see, we have a 10 mil right here next to it. All right, we got that off. That with a magnet real quick. All right, we got that off, and then this whole rail, as you can see, frees up, and we can essentially just lift this out of the way and back over here out of the way for right now, so we got better access to all of our bolts here. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and try to sneak this valve cover on out and get everything freed up to get the valve cover off of the head. So there should be 19 bolts retaining in this 2-4 valve cover. Okay, there's 15 on the outside, and then we have 4 on the inside. And as you can see, these are drenched in oil on my inner ones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 8 mil. These are all 8 mils. Okay, we're going to take an 8 mil deep socket, and I'm going to go ahead and start breaking these loose. I'm going to do it with a ratchet. You could use an impact, small impact, but I prefer to use a ratchet on something like this because it is sensitive. You never know with cars, you never know what you might encounter. So just in case there's a troubled bolt or anything like that, I'm just going to go ahead and use a ratchet and start them off, break them free with a ratchet, and then we'll go ahead and get them all out individually. So let's go ahead and start cracking these things loose. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and start cracking these things loose. So I'm gonna start right here on this front passenger corner. Shouldn't be a lot of work to get it broken loose. It should crack right free. So see, I'm just breaking them free. Then once I have all 19 of these free, we're gonna go ahead and get them all out. All right, so I have all of the surrounding bolts broken free. Now I do want to get these inner 4 as well, but as you can see, they are drenched in oil, and it's a good chance yours might be as well, just because this is a notorious problem on these cars. So what I want to try to do before I go ahead and start breaking those free is I'm just going to take a paper towel, push it in, and we're going to try to absorb some of that oil, you know, just for a minute before we go ahead and just put our socket in there. So we're going to try to get some of that oil out of our bolt holes, and then from there we should be able to get this right out. All right, so I got a lot of that oil cleaned up out of those bolt holes there. So not perfect, but I just wanted to get some of it out before we started wrenching in there. So we're gonna go ahead and remove these 4 remaining inner bolts, and then we can go ahead and take it from there. All right, so we have all 19 nuts and bolts surrounding this whole valve cover, holding it in, all broken free. Now we can go ahead and start getting into getting these fully removed. Now, one thing you do want to note is there is 6 nuts and studs, so you do want to take note as to where these go. Okay, and there is one in that back corner as well, and if you look, it's a stud that spins and it just has a nut on it. All right, so I'll go ahead and take this thing out and let you guys see. All right, so there you have it, guys. You see, it's just a stud with a nut. All right, so make sure you take note of everything, and as you remove them, I do like to keep them in order. Like, you know, I'll have a piece of cardboard to the side like this. I'll put them in order just so I can't possibly mix anything up. Do you have to do it? No. Is it a good idea? Yeah, probably. So, you know, just something to consider. So we're gonna go ahead and start getting these off, and then we can go ahead and remove the valve cover. All right, so now that they're all free, I can just take my impact here and freely back these off. So that's all I'm gonna do. with each one of these. I'm just going to go ahead, fire it out, and then we'll go ahead and try to get this cover off. All right, so we got all of these freed up and loose. Now, they don't really easily just come right out by pulling them out. At least in my case, they aren't. They're all pretty much in there, so I'm just going to leave them. We can take them out with the valve cover. It's really not that big of a deal. So what we can do now is go ahead and attempt to separate this valve cover from the cylinder head. Now, you want to be extremely careful when doing this, because depending on what tool you use, you could potentially damage the head or the surface of the valve cover. You know, sometimes you can use a pry bar, flathead, you know, things of that nature, but you do want to be really careful when using them. When I do a valve cover, I tend to use this gasket scraper. Now, I usually can get it under a corner enough where I can start freeing it up. So I'm gonna start in this left corner here, see if I can get a little bit of leverage on that. Like I said, I want to be really careful. I'm barely putting any pressure on it, but there you go. You can hear it coming up. There it is, guys. I barely touched it. I barely touched it right here in this corner. As you can see, it's pretty much freed up. So we're gonna go ahead and work this thing off, and we'll see if we can sneak it out with this rail in place. All right, guys, the goal is to see if we can sneak this thing off and out of here. So it's pretty much free. I think we're still connected a hair in the back. And you do want to be careful, because there's this foam piece right on the edge of the valve cover in the back. It could slightly prevent you from getting this in or out. So just be aware of that. Come over here. She's extremely tight. All right, guys, so I'm slowly maneuvering it this way out. There we go, got it snuck right out. All right, guys, so we were able to sneak the valve cover out right through the side here on the passenger side. And what I've done, if you've noticed, I just took some zip ties and kind of zip tied these out of the way to try to create the most open space so I can clean. And then when we go to reinstall this, it'll be as easy as possible with the least amount of obstructions, because we are going to have to use RTV on this, and we obviously don't want to drag the cover through the RTV. So one thing before you start cleaning is to note where the RTV is. So you're going to have to put RTV on both sides of that camshaft bearing, over here, that corner, on both sides, and then right here at the timing cover, totaling in 6 spots that we're going to be putting RTV. So what we're going to do is go ahead and get into the cleanup. I'm going to go ahead and clean this up. I am also going to clean up our valve cover, and then we'll go ahead and get into the installation. All right, guys, so I'm not going to get too crazy into the cleaning. I mean, it's pretty much self-explanatory. I don't think we need to see the entire cleaning process, but really, I'm just going to be using paper towels. You just want to clean everything up. Also recommend putting a little bit of paper towel in the spark plug tubes just to protect any debris from getting in there. So, you know, I'm just going to be cleaning everything up, wiping it down. I'm also going to be using a little bit of brake cleaner with red Scotch-Brite. We're going to be going around the edge just to clean it up very lightly. So that's how I would be cleaning the edge. And for all our RTV, we can just use that gasket scraper. You want to scrape it away from the inside of the engine so that you don't get it inside of your actual open engine here. And then you can just do something like this red Scotch-Brite, and as you can see, it's cleaning it up very nice. So paper towels, red Scotch-Brite, brake cleaner should just be all you need to go ahead and get this thing pretty clean. All right, guys, so got the valve cover cleaned up here. It's looking pretty good. I got all the bolts out as well. It was way easier to just try to get the bolts out with the valve cover free. They're a little bit tight when it's on the car, so you can easily pop them out from the bottom when it's off. I try to keep them in order here, but as you can see, my cardboard here started deforming and bending up, so Kind of threw me off, but it's not a big deal. We can always get this back in shape. But here's our new gasket here. We have all of the seals for the bolts, the spark plug seals, and the gasket. I went with the FEL-PRO, and the part number is VS50906R. So that is the one I'm using, FEL-PRO. So I'm gonna go ahead and start installing this gasket, and then we'll go ahead and get it onto the car. All right, so I got all the new grommets all over the bolts. The bolts are all cleaned up. Everything's ready to go and ready to be installed. So now we're just going to go ahead and move on to our gasket. So lay this thing out, and I'm just going to start right here with this indentation for the cam. And now I'm just going to start working my way around. All right, so as you can see, gasket is in. Came out pretty good. All right, so it went in pretty smoothly. So the only thing we have left now is our spark plug seals, and same deal, we're just gonna press those right in. All right guys, so there's our valve cover all prepped and ready. And here is our cylinder head, cleaned up nice. Everything's wiped down, scraped off. All right, so, and remember I do have these zip tied out of the way for now, just to try to keep them as far away from our workroom as possible, so we can easily slip this in, because we do have to put our TV on here, and we want to drop it onto the RTV. We don't want to drag it through. So here are the spots that you need to put our TV. All right, so that is right here where the timing cover is, right here on the other back side, right there, and then right here next to our camshaft bearing. Okay, so there are the 6 spots that we need to put our TV. I'm going to be using the right stuff. It's a pretty good gasket sealer. You can get it at AutoZone, Advance, you know, your local parts store. I've really never had any problems with it. It always seals pretty much anything I use it on. So that's what we're going to be using. We're going to go ahead and throw some dabs on here, and then we're going to go ahead and get this cover on. All right guys, so I have my right stuff. I'm going to do a bead right there. Just a nice little bead right next to the timing chain on the timing cover. All right, take it back here to that T point. All right, go back to the other side on the T point. This one's a little tight, but we'll get in it. All right, got that. And now the last 2 spots is right here where the camshaft bearing is. All right, so right there. Then we just got to get right to the back. All right guys, we got it all RTV, so we're gonna go ahead and line up our valve cover. All right guys, RTV is on. We gotta work fast because it does dry reasonably quick. So we got all of our bolts right there, grabbing the valve cover. And what we're gonna do is go ahead and start sneaking this thing in here. Now this is gonna be tight and tough, but we gotta do our best if we can here. I don't wanna drop it on unless I know I'm on it, as we are going to land on our RTV. All right, I got that one pretty good. Come back over here to this corner here. All right, guys, I got it on pretty good. I actually snuck it in better than I thought it was going to go. So now we got to get our 19 bolts and studs into this as quick as we can. We're going to start with doing them finger tight. Now keep in mind there are different bolts. You got bolts and then you got your studs. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the stud. It goes right here. And we're just going to start getting all these in finger tight, and then we're going to go ahead and torque them all to spec. All right guys, so we got all of our studs started off finger tight. So now I'm just going through and I'm going to be doing all of the actual bolts now surrounding the valve cover and the 4 inner ones as well. So we're going to go ahead, do the same thing, drop all these in, start them off finger tight, and then we're going to ensure all of them are tight just by a little snug of an extension with my hand in a socket. And then we're going to go ahead and get into the torquing sequence. All right, guys, so I got everything in finger tight. I'm just going back over these bolts, every one that I got just by hand, and I'm just snugging them down with an extension and a socket by hand. All right, so just hand tight. So first start them off with your hand, finger tight. Then we're gonna snug them hand tight with this, and then we're gonna go ahead and torque all of them to spec. All right, so we got everything hand tight. All 19 of our bolts are now tight. So here is the torquing sequence for this valve cover. All right, so you can see the torque sequence for all 19 bolts.
Now the torque spec is 90 inch-pounds.
All right, have my inch-pound wrench locked in. Start right here, dead center. That is number 1. So we're gonna go ahead and go through the motions on this and get all these locked in.
To 90 inch-pounds.
All right, there's 1. So now we're on to 2. All right, guys, torquing the last 19th bolt in the sequence.
There it is, guys. We got all 19 of these locked in to 90 inch-pounds.
I want to go back over them just like this and just double check and make sure all of them, like, see how that has a click. Just make sure all of them are snug at click, and we should be good. All right, so our valve cover is in, torque to spec. Everything is good as far as the cover is concerned, so we could go ahead and start reassembling this thing, guys. So we're gonna go ahead and start off simple. I'm just gonna drop this ignition coil in here. We're gonna drop all the ignition coils in just to keep that spark plug tube from having anything foreign fall in it. So I'm just gonna go ahead, drop all these in. Make sure they're clean. Make sure you don't have anything oil-wise or anything on the rubber boot. Make sure it's nice and clean. So just gonna go ahead, get all these dropped in. And now I'm gonna go ahead and finger tight all of our 10 mil bolts right into the coils. All right, guys, so I got all these coils in snug, finger tight. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna torque these 10 mils to
90 inch-pounds.
same thing that we did our valve cover bolts to, and that should be more than enough torque to hold these in nice and clean. All right, so we're just continuing on with the reassembly. So we're going to take this line here, this aluminum line, and slide it right back over its mount points here. All right, you should be able to get them both over with no issue. And then we just need to take our 16 millimeter big hex stud, get that started on, and then our 10 mil here, get this going, and then we'll snug both of these in. All right, so I got both of these finger tight, so we're gonna take our 16 mil, just snug this home. That should be more than enough. And then I have a 10 mil here, and I'm just gonna snug that on as well. And that should be perfectly fine. Once you get it finger tight, just give it a little snug and just enough to hold it in place, and that should be more than enough than those bolts need. So there we go, guys, that is all back together. So now what we can do is start piecing this harness rail, these plastic harness rails, back together. I'm going to cut these zip ties that I had holding it out of my way so I had better work room, and then we'll start getting it back into place. All right, so as you know, I zip tied this just to get this thing out of the way in the best possible room I could have to work on this thing. So all I'm doing is cutting my zip ties that I put there to hold that back out of the way. All right, and then we can go ahead and get this thing back into its orientation. All right, guys, so we're going to continue on with our reassembly here, getting this harness back in place. So I'm just going to go ahead back over to the battery where we pop this out for a little bit more flexibility. Push that back in. All right, so we're going to go ahead and come back over here, start getting this back aligned. And what I want to do is I want to go ahead and put all of our ignition coil harnesses back in. Just going to lock those in. All right, so just make sure got them all nice and tight. All right, this back one here is a little tight up against the rail itself, but I think I could sneak it in here. There we go. All right, so all of them are back in place. So now we're gonna come over here. We're gonna slide the back of the rail there over that stud. All right, so that's back in place, and that kind of brings these two rails almost into alignment. All right, I'm gonna get this underneath it here. All right, so there's that. And this is, you know, pretty much in place. So now what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna plug in our harness here. All right, let's make sure that heat shield is nice and tight on there. All right, guys, so we're gonna grab this one right here. Lock that in, press that shield back up, and get that retainer right there on the line. All right, so we pretty much got these back in alignment. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and put some push clips in here. We did break every single one of them. Every one of them broke. And I actually had to work pretty hard to get the old bottom part of them out. I mean, it was crazy. Like I tried heating them. I tried melting them. I eventually just drilled them out because I wanted to put something back in there. So they pretty much all broke like this. All right, so if you're lucky, maybe you'll get all 6 of these out with no issue, but I can't say that was my luck, and it was even harder to get them out once they broke. So I got all of them out, and I actually got some replacements. I went right to Advanced, and AutoZone has this as well. They're just dormer replacements. It's a Chrysler panel push retainer, and that's them right there. They're pretty small. All right, and they fit really nice in there, so they should work just fine. So Chrysler panel push retainers, Dorman 963056D. So that's what we got to retain these. I got 2 boxes because of course there's only 5 and we needed 6. So I got 2 boxes of them, and we can go ahead and push those clips right into this electronic rail, and then we'll have this back in position. All right, guys, so we pretty much have everything involving our wire harness and everything reattached and back where it belongs. So we're gonna go ahead and lock it in with our new panel clips here. So there is 6 of them, remember. Here is my new one here. Press it right down, looks brand new and perfect. You would never know. Let's get this back one here. All right, keep in mind this one is going to get locked in with the air box, so we don't put that one in yet. But we can come to the front rail here and just push all these in. And there we have it, guys. These are perfect fit replacements for those push clips. All right, so now that we have our new retaining push clips in there, we could go ahead and start finalizing our install here. So one thing you want to do is make sure you put that spacer, you know, I put that to the side earlier, slide that back on right there. We have our breather hose here. I'm just going to lightly slide this and push it right back into position. All right, so that's back where it belongs. So we're going to do the same thing for the PCV hose. Make sure your harness right here is underneath, and we'll slide this PCV hose right back tight into position. All right, so that is back on as well. So pretty much have everything together here. All right, everything is back where it belongs. So the only thing we really got to do is just get our air box back on and the tube that goes with it running through the back, and we're pretty much done. All right, so we have pretty much everything back where it belongs. The only thing we have left here is our air assembly right here with the tube and going right to our air box. So what we're going to do is sneak this thing back in, get it into position, and then we're going to go ahead and give this thing a test run. All right, guys, so we just kind of want to sneak this back in and under everything. You need to be really careful with that plastic harness in the back. Not going to be the funnest thing in the world. Not the easiest and best design in my opinion, but all right. We got that slid in. Come over here to the air box and slide the tube onto the air box back into position. Okay. Get this air box lined up with our hole here, and we're going to get this mount right here lined up with our bolt hole. So this is pretty much back exactly where it needs to be. All right, so we're going to start. We're going to go ahead and put our harness, plug it back in, lock that into place, All right, now what I'm gonna do is lock in our 7mm here, holding in the hose to the throttle body. So 7mm, we'll get this tight. All right, that should be nice and tight, locked back in. All right, so we got that into place. And now we're gonna do the same thing over here. And we're gonna lock in our 8mm on this hose clamp. So just get it till it's nice and tight. Make sure you have it all the way pressed forward onto the air box. You don't gotta go crazy, just get it nice and snug and tight. Should be good right there. It's not going anywhere. And then we can take our last new push clip and we're gonna go ahead and push this right into where we took it out of the air box right there. So that's back in position. So we got all of our new 6 push clips in now. And now we're just gonna take our 10mm here, get this started back on the mount point of this air tube. And we'll go ahead and send that home. And we should be good, guys. All right, so I just have my 10mm on my impact. I'm just gonna get it till it's lightly snug. There we go, guys. So nice and snug, nothing crazy. And we got everything back into its original orientation. The only thing we would have to do is put the engine cover on, of course. Now I'm going to leave the engine cover off for now because I am going to start this up. We're going to let it run. We're going to see if we have any leaks and see if we solved our leaks in all of our prone areas. All right, so we're going to leave the cover off just so we can get a test run going. And as you can see, everything's pretty cleaned up. So that's why you want to make sure everything is 100% clean, because that's how you know if you still have a leak, if you actually solved your issue. So make sure you clean really well to ensure that you actually fix the problem once you go to recheck and you have everything back installed. So this is back together, guys. Let's go ahead and give it a test fire. All right, guys, so this thing has been running for a little bit now. Checking for leaks. See if we don't have any leaks. We're gonna check where your RTD is. Check these plague holes here, and looks dry. All right, so you can see that, but she looks pretty dry, guys. So hopefully this solved our valve cover leak. It's looking promising. So it looked like we solved this leak, guys. So I hope this helped with doing the valve cover gasket on your 2.4 Dodge Dart. Make sure you stay tuned because you never know when I might be wrenching on this thing again. And until next time, guys.